Welcome to the Closing Intelligence Show. Every episode, we'll walk through one of our experiments to shorten our sales cycles, drive up deal value, and close more deals.
So when I first started at Proposify, we had a mighty CSM team of 2, and we had a sales team that was substantially larger. At this point as well, our sales team owned renewals. So they would work on closing new business, and then they'd also be comped on renewing large customers. It set up a very interesting dynamic and one that really did not benefit the customers. So we had this really bizarre setup where the compensation model wasn't aligned with what was best for the customer or what was best for the business. And as a result, we had account executives that would not prioritize renewals. Renewals would be very late. Expansion revenue was really hard to find because no one was focused on driving it. And our CS team felt sort of helpless. They would do all of this work to get someone to a renewal, but they had no real control over whether or not that renewal happened. They had no levers to pull in terms of contract or changing price or adding services. So it was a really tough setup to manage and one that ultimately wasn't driving success for the business.
When we were first moving up market and the CSM function wasn't fully built out, sales was pretty heavily involved in helping existing customers, change their plan or upgrade their account. And a lot of times it wasn't even really about them needing a new plan or a different plan. It just became trying to troubleshoot or problem solve with the customer. And once in a while you got lucky and there was essentially an order taking scenario where you were upgrading their plan and it was lucrative for the salesperson, and those ones felt good, but they were few and far between.
I'm not a huge fan of the model where sales gets to leverage CS through trials and through things like this to close new business and then takes all the commission. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel fair. If you're doing the work to drive a renewal home and to drive an expansion, then you deserve a cut of that. Moving in this direction and creating this dichotomy also allowed us to evolve our comp models to align with what was actually best for the business instead of what was actually best for an individual rep here or there.
When I was coming on board, we didn't really have a full-fledged CS function yet. We really got to kind of start fresh as far as, we had an existing customer base, but at that time we weren't practicing true CS best practices. So where we're at now, we don't like to be reactive with our customers. Yes, we actually want to be proactive with our customers as well. And to take that even a step further, what we're seeing more and more for our CSMs is not only do we like them to be proactive, we really need them to be predictive with what our customers are going to do next.
So a few years back, we had an opportunity with a financial services company. On the onset of it, it didn't look like a big deal on paper. We were talking specifically with one region, being in Canada. But once we got that deal across the line from the get-go, there was a huge expansion opportunity. This was a Fortune 500 company. And it was one where we really had to leverage that relationship with the CSM from the onset to say, hey, we could tackle that bigger opportunity and we do have the expertise in-house to make it happen. That wouldn't have gone super well without the customer success function and having a really strong CSM on that account.
So one of the nuances in all of this is the idea of land and expand. So land and expand means you land a small number of seats for a company, and then over time that account will grow by adding seats. That's the best sort of growth strategy for our company in the SMB segment that we work. So when we presented the idea to the account executives that we were going to move the renewals over to the CSMs, one of the reactions to that was, well, I will just work to close the largest possible deal, regardless of if that's the right move for this customer to ultimately become successful. So we had to navigate that and be very clear that our model here for growth over time is to land and expand. We don't want to come into an implementation with too many seats, trying to work with too many teams, and ultimately fail because our account executives wanted to gather the most commission. That took some work with our account executives. You also have to have great people for them to be able to buy into that model. But that's where we landed, and it's been incredibly successful for us. We're commonly, net expanding about 120% on average per year for the customers that come in through our account executives, and that's because they are willing to play the game the way that we want to play it, and that's selling the right amount of seats to start and allowing the CSMs to expand over time. When we move up into the mid-market, there are instances where our CSMs will come into the sales cycle, collaborate with our account executives, and close a larger deal, and there's very rare instances where we'll do a commission split if the sales cycle demands it.
What it really boils down to me in customer success, if an account is really primed or if a customer is primed to purchase more from us, really comes down to two things. First one would be, have they achieved their desired outcomes? And then the second piece is their experience doing it, the customer experience. That is a huge, huge part that I think a lot of companies aren't always taking into account, is what does that experience look like? Yes, I could be achieving my desired outcomes, but it's a terrible time doing that if I'm a customer. So if you don't have one or the other, it's really tough to get to that spot with the customer to try to sell them more.
So if you have sales reps now that are doing the upsells, the renewals, and the CSMs are just managing the relationships, I think the first thing to do if you're looking to transfer that over to the CSM team, you need to look at what's working first. So what goes well with sales when they are having those conversations? Try to tease out the best practices that are already there. So that's step number one. Step number two, I would say, would be to pick one rep on that CSM team. There's probably someone who shows a tendency to have a little more business and sales acumen, and essentially have them as the guinea pig. So start to test out your process that you come up with so you can get a quick feedback loop, and you don't bet the farm on the whole team starting with a brand new process that you're not sure is going to work.
I know our vendors and the people that we work with and our partners, they're going to ask me, and I expect them to ask me, am I willing to purchase more, right? And I think that's one thing that I'm trying to get through with the CSMs right now, is that, okay, your customer expects you to ask them to purchase more. The second piece is, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that they say, you know what, I don't feel quite comfortable at this time, or even no. And even if they do say, you know, I'm not quite that comfortable at this time, we really see that as an opportunity to understand how come they're saying no. And we actually start to do a little more research with that one customer to say, okay, why, you know, we thought they were in a good position, you know, maybe they aren't as, you know, as successful as we initially anticipated.
There are times when bringing sales or bringing a specific renewal focused role into a business makes sense. So as deal sizes get bigger, as terms get longer, as relationships get more complex, a CSM can't manage all of that, nor can a sales rep. This is a model or sort of a spectrum that businesses go through and they sort of evolve through. When you're a very small company with one rep, that rep's closing and probably renewing. We were at the stage where it made sense to split those responsibilities because we had multiple reps on both sides of the sales and CS coin. It is a model that evolves over time, but for us, at the point that we were at, it made sense to take that responsibility from our account executives and give it to our CSMs.
You can help the channel make more content by liking and subscribing to Proposify on YouTube. Leave a comment and let us know what you'd like to see in a future episode.